Up in the prison industrial complex because of the lack of justice within that. For example, people really committing petty crimes but getting felony charges because of their race or because of their socioeconomic class, for example. So that child in kindergarten who has a father or a mother or both parents.
So I think she said they're getting felony charges because of their race. So they're committing petty crimes, and because they're black, I'm assuming, instead of getting like a petty crime charge, they're getting a federal charge or a felony charge, which I don't necessarily think that's true. It's something called a 3-strike rule in the United States, so people aren't just getting felony charges.
But can you just say something more about, I'll be talking about this later in the semester, but it'd be really cool to hear you start the conversation about the injustice of our immensely unequal education system, which I think that, you're hitting it, but it'd be really cool if you could go right down the center lane. That a lot of people, most people in here who went to very wealthy schools,
Unequal?
Sure.
they just don't understand how much that can get in the way and hold people, just get in the way, trip people up.
Yeah.
Why don't we have as many students coming from some of the schools where you'll be working at in May coming to Penn State as we do some of the other wealthier schools and so on?
Right. So what a lot of people don't realize, especially if you come from an advantaged background and if you've had lots of support structures moving you through an educational system, you're not clear that there's actually a pathway from K-12 all the way up through college, and there are systems in place and there are structures in place, there are supports in place that actually move you.
I wonder why, and this is no offense to the professor or the young women speaking, why does he assume that the majority of people at Penn State comes from a wealthy school? I don't necessarily think that's true. I think the majority of people in general just come from like an average school. I do think somewhere like Penn State probably has a larger majority, like a larger group of people who come from like a wealthier school. But I mean, in terms of America, Penn State, it's a very nice college, but I'm not gonna say mid-level college, but it's just a normal college. So the majority of people there don't really come from a wealthy school. But let's get back
within that context so that you can arrive at these places. And so if there are leaky parts along the pipeline, K through 12 to college, there are just greater chances for people to fall through the cracks and for a lot of deleterious energies to get into the cracks. And so it very well may be the case that a child starting out in kindergarten and going in through elementary school might have parents who have lost their jobs, who were not highly skilled in the first place, who then turn to illegal activities to make ends meet, and then get caught up in the prison industrial complex because of the lack of justice within that.
Okay.
For example, people really committing petty crimes but getting felony charges because of their race or because of their socioeconomic.
Because of their race. Hold on. I was following along because, of course, in our education system, there are cracks. Like she said, it's like a pipeline. The better your elementary school is, will lead to the better your middle school is, will lead to the better high school you go to, will lead to the better college you go to. That's the natural trajectory. But when you try to sneak in, and I look at the students in the crowd, they probably just a little tired, but they look a little annoyed. But I'm gonna say they're tired. She tried to sneak in race into that, like how I don't know how your race can lead you to do petty crimes. I don't know, but maybe it can. But hey, let's get back. Hey y'all, make sure y'all subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe.
Up in the prison industrial complex because of the lack of justice within that. For example, people really committing petty crimes but getting felony charges because of their race or because of their socioeconomic class, for example. So that child in kindergarten who has a father or a mother or both parents.
So I think she said they're getting felony charges because of their race. So they're committing petty crimes, and because they're black, I'm assuming, instead of getting like a petty crime charge, they're getting a federal charge or a felony charge, which I don't necessarily think that's true. It's something called a 3-strike rule in the United States, so people aren't just getting felony charges for petty crimes, but maybe it's something I don't know, so I'm not going to speak too much on that.
Who get caught up in the system, that's a leak in his funnel all the way to college. And it's a leak that can get repaired along the way, maybe through church, maybe through a government assistance program, maybe through a social program that's inside of the neighborhood, but those may be underfunded as well. And so that child may need to depend on relatives, for example. That child might get moved around. And so what we know is that a stagnant space is crucial for development in early childhood. Kids don't move, literally move from address to address. They have a better chance of setting up a routine and feeling stable so that they can focus in school. So that they can be available to experience, so that they can take in new knowledge.
That's facts.
But if that leak happens and they're shuttled to an auntie or a grandmother or an uncle who needs to take care of them, the disruption has started. And then what we're doing is trying to play catch up with that kid. So by the time they get to middle school and puberty hits and they're interested in all kinds of new things outside of school, and there are very few people who are sort of telling that person what to do with their time, with their energy, with their resources, with their money, with their interests, that's where the leak really starts to rupture. That's where the pipeline starts to fall apart. That's why we need teachers who are inside of these contexts, counselors, administrators, policymakers, who can interrupt the leaks that are in the pipeline and to support children when they have this falling apart. And so when...
And I love people like this. Of course, when she talks about the race thing and how, like, your race specifically, I may have misheard her, but how that can lead you to do crimes, I didn't agree with that. But I love people like this because in schools, these are some of the best people you can meet. The people who are passionate about you getting to that next level, they really do help you, bro. Like, we've all had a teacher like this, or at least I had, or like a administrator like this who really just has a passion for doing what they love. No cap.
Leaks all the way up from K to 12. It is very difficult to catch up academically, socially, culturally, to make it into a place like Penn State. It becomes less and less likely every single year that they get closer to graduation. But if we have highly skilled, incredibly thoughtful, sensitive, warm, loving teachers who are brilliant to man all of those places in the pipeline, we can catch more of those kids.
Or even if you have people who want to take 2 weeks out of their lives.
That's the beginning.
To just learn. Like, what's really cool about your program, and one of the reasons I really wanted you to come talk about, is you don't have to even want to go into education. You could maybe never go into a classroom. But
the place where I kind of disagree with is when she started talking about the teachers. Of course, you need to have warm and loving teachers, and like I said, we all need a teacher like this. But when it comes to getting into a school like Penn State, if they have higher requirements, then having a warm and loving teacher, honestly, is not the number one thing you need. You need a teacher who's going to teach you the right thing so you can get a 1,400 or what's the average Penn State SAT score? 14 something, I don't know, on your SAT so you can score into the school. So when you're trying to say like, oh, they just need a loving teacher so they can get into a school like Penn State, my question is, why do these students have to go to a school like Penn State? Because in America, God bless our country, there's school levels for every level of education. What do I mean by that? If you aren't as academically, I'm not even going to say gifted, because that's not really a gift. School is more so like how much work you can do. It really does, your childhood environment really does affect that. Like, if you don't have the environment coming up, you can go to a community college in state, and it won't be as much, and you can get you can get federal aid, or you can go to an in-state school that's not a Penn State, but you can go to your state school and you can get money there. So why do you have to push these kids to a Penn State or a Duke University? They can go to a regular school and they can test into it and do well.
just take 2 weeks to learn about yourself and about the world in different ways.
Absolutely. We have majors who focus on education. We have psych, anthropology, biology. We've had majors from every walk of life from multiple campuses come through Philly.
Mm-hmm. Hey, so I'm gonna say something, and I want you to just give us your quick response.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, quick, whatever. Your response, your Janine response. White supremacy.
Yes.
Oh, brother.
What do you think people, what would you want people to understand about white supremacy?
How did this topic even come up? Look, we're talking about what? Unequal education systems within America, and somehow this comes up. And I'm not trying to be like, I don't want to be that guy, but how did this equate to anything she just said? How does having a broken home coming up, being a foster kid coming up, having parents who are in and out your house coming up, not having the, I guess, resources coming up lead to this? And the problem I have with this is that it kind of paints the image as if what she was just talking about is like a black only issue. When honestly, I'm pretty sure a lot of the people watching this video face the same issue she was talking about. I don't know like exactly, but that's just my ideal.
In the most
Right
simple,
here.
so in the most simple terms, white supremacist patriarchal ideology or idea that is an idea that whiteness is superior to any other racial category, and that other racial categories are inferior to whiteness. And that idea is fairly endemic in our society. It gets taken for granted. It's played out in the ways that we structure media, in the ways that we structure curriculum, in the ways that we structure experience, in the ways that we structure education. And so it's this elusive thing. It's in an undercurrent. It's not something that we have readily access to, but we can see it in the ways that it's playing out in our socio-political terrain right now. If anybody's watching the news or if anybody's keeping up with what's going on in society, you can see the rise of this idea that there's a competition among the racial categories or people who have these demographic claims. And so if we don't name it and really notice it in very specific and powerful ways, expose it, and then provide context within which people can talk about it and be very, very clear about the ways that it's formed and the ways that it functions, we won't interrupt it. We won't interrupt it. So one of the things that people say to me, because as Dr. Richard said, I study death and I study terror, and a white supremacist patriarchal ideology is connected to those phenomena.
So let me get this straight. You just went on a big, rant. I don't even know how to call her a rant because she is a doctor. I'm sure she said she studied terror and death. I don't know much about that. But how does having an unfair pipeline... Sorry, y'all. I'm just a little confused on where this conversation just went. I'm not gonna lie. Like, she was spitting facts. Because children who come from broken homes and, who don't have the same resources, they will have a lower chance of getting into a school like Penn State. What I was saying was there are other schools. Like, you don't have to go to a Penn State. You can go to a community college and work your way up and transfer to Penn State, or you could just go to an in-state school that has lower entrance requirements. Like, there are millions of colleges within America. But my thing is, how does referring to she said a white supremacy patriarchal something society and how we need to start talking about it more and how that's the cause of all the... Look, I don't know how she got that. I'm not gonna hold you. But I don't know, man. I really don't know.
And so one of the things I know for sure is that there is just no way to interrupt any part of that ideology if we don't form really powerful contexts within which people can go and live.
What?
And connect and study and think outside of their regular context where they have lots of distractions. You've got lots of excuses. There are lots of ways that you can sort of like fall apart in your thinking, but in a context where it's like, this is a space dedicated to awareness and awakenings, dedicated to arguments and discussions, dedicated to sense making and memory production. It's dedicated to the illumination of this undercurrent so that we can wake up.
I don't know where she's going with this. She's talking about wake up like we're in a trance. Like we're in this type of white supremacy trance. I don't know. Hey, I don't know where she's going with this. I'm trying to be the middle car, but I don't know where this is going. I don't think most Americans are in a white supremacy trance, and it's the biggest detriment to us as a nation. I don't think that's the case. Especially if you're talking to some young college kids. Most of these kids have $40, $50, $60,000 worth of loans, and they come from middle class households. I don't even think they are thinking about that. I think they just think about how they're gonna write this essay that's due tomorrow morning, and they have a 4 to 7 p.m. lab. Look, Dr. Janine, you're extremely intelligent, and this is not a knock, but I'm a little confused on what you're talking about. Like,
So it's like I'm really struck often by how many. First off, people are just. It's one of these things that, in particular, white people are just. I find afraid of that. It just feels like it's an attack, and it's kind of like. But how do you know if you've never really engaged in a conversation? It would be like me as a man thinking I understand women, but I never actually sat as a fly on the wall in a room full of women talking about what it's like to be a woman. Forget about in public, forget about in a space like this. Just put 10 thoughtful women in a room and have them talk about being a woman and have me just listen in.
Okay, that's a very interesting example, but I don't think that's the case. A better example would be let's talk about a woman and a man, because you brought that up. A woman comes to you and says, I have to work super hard every day. I just have to wake up and go to work and work super hard. That'll be like the equivalent of you saying, well, I do that too. Like I also work hard. And the reason I'm using that specific example is because when you're talking about having white privilege in the context of what she was just talking about, having a pipeline to the best schools, a lot of white Americans don't have the pipeline to the best schools. So when you were talking to them about having a white privilege, they're just looking at you like, I never got that privilege. Like, I don't have that specific privilege, so I don't know how to really, I guess, help you in a way. I hope I'm making sense. Because they're like, well, I don't have that privilege either. Like, we in the same boat. So it's like, we both struggling. Like, so that's kind of what I'm alluding to. So I don't think white people just don't understand it. I just think they just are kind of confused by it in a way. Like, they're like, what are you talking about? I don't necessarily have what you're saying. And it just kind of confuses both sides.
I'm going to hear some things that are just going to blow my mind and have to transform the way I think about being a man and what it means to be a woman. It's going to transform it from me standing over here observing on and thinking like, oh yeah, I get what it means to be a woman. You know, I get what I get what it means to not be white. It's like, no, you gotta be in. Just be in. Don't be afraid. Just jump in the deep end. And
I get what it means to not be white. Oh, brother. Just jump in the deep end. Like, and I like this professor. I really do. But my thing is, why are you trying to teach white students what it means to not be white? I'm just trying to think. Like, think about the average white student. The average white family in America the average white family, like the whole family, makes $79,000 a year. The whole family. You're trying to teach this average white family, their son or their daughter, what it means to not be white. It's kind of weird. It's a little weird, I'm not gonna lie. Because in any other context, if you went to an Asian family and said, I'm gonna teach you how to not be Asian, or you went to a black family and said, I'm gonna teach you how to not be black, it would just be weird. It would be disrespectful in a way. But anyways, if you have any more suggestions, I'm gonna end this here. This is kind of weird. Comment down below.